Cody Talks NFL, presented by Blitzalytics.com. And here's your host, Cody Manning.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Friday edition of Cody Talks NFL. Now, I'm going to go ahead and dive right into the three biggest pieces of news that came out since my Monday episode. The big news dropper is Eli Manning is going to the bench, and Daniel Jones, their number 6 overall pick, is going to get the start. I'm very interested in seeing how Daniel Jones will play on Sunday. He's on the road against the Bucs. They got a lot better defense than they had last year, so this won't be just an easy task for Jones. So I'm interested to see how he'll play. We'll see if he can continue that momentum that he had in the preseason, where he looked like he was one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. But again, that's preseason. I'll look forward to see how he can play on Sunday. I'll say about how I think the Giants will do when I do my little preview on the Bucs and Giants game later on this episode. But to go on, Eli Manning is going to the bench. One of the biggest talked about things, even before he went to the bench, is Eli Manning a Hall of Famer? I'm here today to fight against all the people that say he's not. When people talk about the Hall of Fame, they always want to bring up, Eli's stats, his interceptions, and all that stuff, which is rightfully so, argument against him making it in the Hall of Fame. But one thing I always like to remind people, this is not the Hall of Fame of stats. The Hall of Fame is about your impact on the game, your impact off the field. If you want to go back over the last 20 years, if you want to talk about the last 20 years of the NFL, well, more 15 years of the NFL, please tell me the story about the last 15 years of the NFL without Eli Manning. Okay, now please tell me a story about the dynasty of the Patriots without Eli Manning. You can't. So if he's part of the NFL history, he had an impact on the field, whether you guys like it or not. Let's talk about the off field, how much he has done for the city of New York. He's raised $150,000 per year for the Manning Children's Clinic. When he was the chair of the New York City March for the Babies, he raised $25 million. He's a Red Cross Celeb Cabinet, fundraiser for guide dogs, Make-A-Wish supporter, Tackle Kids Cancer, Classroom Cares Ambassador, and in 2017, he was the Walter Payton Man of the Year. Now, if you want to look at his on-field performance, he's had 56,471 passing yards. That's 7th in history, so he's top 10 overall in that. 362 passing touchdowns. That's 8th in history. Now, obviously, he has the 241 interceptions. That's a blemish on his resume. He's got 2 Super Bowl wins, 2 Super Bowl MVPs. Now, he's 116 on his record, so he's got a 500 record, which is like I talked about on the Monday episode, why I think they were going to bench him to make sure he doesn't go below 500 on his wins. And he has the most quarterback wins in Giants history. So he's the best quarterback in New York, in the Giants history. 4-time Pro Bowler. He's never missed a game due to injury. And he's number 2 in history as far as consecutive starts with his 210 regular season starts. Now, that's my case for him going in. I know people like to, I'm on the side that Eli has not been Eli the last 3 years. He shouldn't probably have lasted as long as he did over the last 3 years. But New York held on to him because of what he's done on and off the field for him. And, one last point, for all the people that want to clown on Eli, Bengals fans, Jets fans, Cardinals fans, all these teams that have struggled at the quarterback position over the years and don't have Super Bowls. Please tell me that you would not have Eli's career. If you could take Eli's career and place that at Cincinnati, they'll take that. The Jets, if you could get Darnold could be the best quarterback ever, throwing 40 touchdowns a year, but if he doesn't win Super Bowls, who cares? So I think Eli deserves in the Hall of Fame. He's not first ballot Hall of Famer, but he will get in one day just because his impact on and off the field, and you just simply can't tell a story about the history of the NFL without mentioning Eli Manning's name. Now, moving on, right after the recording of the Monday episode, Minkah Fitzpatrick, he got traded to the Steelers. The Dolphins traded Minkah Fitzpatrick, a 4th rounder in 2020 and a 7th rounder in 2021. And in return, the Dolphins got a 1st rounder for the upcoming draft. So now they have 3 first-round picks in the 2020 draft, a 5th rounder in 2020, and a 6th rounder in 2021. I like this move for the Steelers. They needed secondary help. Mika's on a cheap deal. I mean, I understand the argument why to trade away the first round pick when you could possibly pick a quarterback with the Ben Roethlisberger at the end of his career. I definitely understand that, but obviously this shows their belief in Mason Rudolph. I think this is a great move for the Steelers to get somebody like of his caliber, because now they kind of are rebuilding that defense so they can help that defense maybe lead to victories this season with Mason Rudolph leading on the offense. So if they can get the defense figured out, that should help out their offense. We'll see if this has any immediate impact. And Fitzpatrick will be playing on Sunday for the Steelers. And then probably the biggest piece of news that dropped since my Monday episode is when Jalen Ramsey requested a trade at the beginning of this week. A lot of information has came out throughout the week on that since his request. Now, this morning, Ian Rappaport did report that Shad Khan, the owner of the Jaguars, loves Ramsey, and he wants to pay him. So he wants to make it work out if they can. Otherwise, they are willing to move on from him. He also reported that Ramsey's beef is actually not with Doug Marrone. He felt disrespected from Tom Coughlin and the rest of the front office. So I'm not sure if this is going to end up being a move where Shad Khan's got to pick a player over the front office. That's something that's going to be interesting to watch. This is getting recorded right now. Just looking at the time, it's 10:41. So if you guys are listening to this episode, it's very plausible that Jalen Ramsey has already been traded, and maybe even happens while I'm talking to you guys right now. And moving on, report is that Jags want 2 first-rounders. He's definitely worth it with this type of play. Earlier this summer, he was on Taylor Lewan, the tackle from Titans, his podcast, and he told him if he were to move on from Jacksonville, that he could see himself playing for the Raiders or the Titans. Obviously, Jacksonville won't trade him in the division to the Titans. So the Raiders definitely that makes more sense for the Raiders because they have the draft capital and they have the cap space to pay him. That seems like the most likely landing spot to me. But Josina Anderson came out and said basically every team has inquired about Ramsey, which you should. I mean, he's arguably the best corner in the NFL. But she said that teams like the Chiefs, the Ravens, the Vikings, the Raiders, the Eagles, and the Seahawks have made some substantive inquiries. But like I mentioned, every team's made a call. If I had to make my prediction, I say that right now, after that win yesterday, it probably gave Jacksonville a little bit more of a confidence that maybe they can win with Minshew at quarterback. I could see them maybe trying to mend this relationship and try to get him to a contract extension today, if they can get that to work. But if not, he'll probably get traded. And like I already kind of said, I think he ends up going to the Raiders when it's all said and done. Moving on, recapping last night's game was a little bit of a surprise for me. The Jaguars beat the Titans 20-7. The Jaguars got 9 sacks. Gardner Minshew, the sensation, the legend, is looking great. I mean, I always thought he could be a quality backup coming into the draft last year, but I didn't expect him to play like this if he had to see the field at the beginning of the year. He was looking great. He's very accurate on his deep throws, the sideline throws. Really like what I'm seeing from him. He still's got some things he needs to work on, but he's given the Jacksonville Jaguars and their fans some hope. On the opposite side, Marcus Mariota, it might be time. He did not look good. He held the ball too long. He's got the athletic ability to stretch out plays, but he just stood in the pocket and looked confused. That led to 9 sacks by the Jacksonville defense. That offense could never get anything going. When they got the ball back in the fourth quarter, down 13, they started the drive off with a run. They had no sense of urgency. Even when they had that drive, like he was just check down here and there, no trying to push the ball down the field. I just wonder if it's time to move on to Ryan Tannehill, and if that will happen soon. I would not be surprised if within the next week or two there's reports that the Titans coaching staff is considering moving on to Tannehill. We'll see, because they got a defense. I thought the defense would play a lot better. They did tighten up a little bit in the second half, but mainly that's because their offense just couldn't get anything going. And sitting right now, I mean, Jaguars 1-2, Titans 1-2, and we'll see how the Colts and Texans do on Sunday. So this AFC South is still up for grabs, and it could be on the Texans or Colts that take that AFC South lead. Now, moving on to the preview of the Sunday games. First game I'll talk about is Cincinnati's traveling out to Buffalo to face the Bills. No major news from either team. on their fronts, but there's quite a bit of injuries on the Cincinnati front. Kerry Wynn hasn't practiced with a concussion. B.W. Webb hasn't practiced with a forearm injury. Cordy Glenn, their starting left tackle, hasn't practiced with a concussion. A.J. Green still out with that ankle injury. Michael Jordan, their left guard, hasn't practiced with a knee injury. Carl Lawson hasn't practiced with a hamstring injury. And then Andre Smith, who isn't the best left tackle that's replacing Cordy Glenn, he's dealing with a groin injury. He was limited in practice yesterday. So they're really banged up on that front. As far as the Bills, Tyler Croft, who's working his way back from an injury he had in the summer, he hurt his foot in practice yesterday, so his status is in doubt to face his former team in Cincinnati. Teron Johnson, their cornerback, is dealing with a hamstring injury. He hasn't practiced. Devin Singletary, their rookie running back, is dealing with a hamstring, and he hasn't practiced this week. And Tre'Davious White, their star corner, is dealing with a neck injury, but he's been limited, so it sounds like he should be good to go. Always looking for those final injury reports that come out on Friday afternoon till evening. As far as how I think this game should go, with the Bengals being so banged up, specifically on the left side of the line, the Bills got a strong defensive front. I think they're going to be able to get after Andy Dalton all day. They should be able to stuff the run that can contain Joe Mixon. They got the cornerbacks that should be able to help lock down like a John Ross and a Tyler Boyd. And, Josh Allen is looking great. They still got Frank Gore and TJ Yeldon if Devin Singletary can't go. I honestly, with this being at home, this needs to be a game that the Bills, they got to make a statement. It's not necessarily a statement game because they're 2-0. A lot of people doubt, because they had some easy first two games. This is technically an easy game, and this should be a game you win, right? Good teams win games against poor teams. So if they end up losing for whatever reason, then people are going to throw doubt in Buffalo's way. So I think the Bills easily win this. I could see them winning by 2 touchdowns at the end of it. Moving on, Detroit is traveling to Philadelphia to face the Lions. Earlier this week, the Lions did release C.J. Anderson and sign Paul Perkins. So if you listen to the Fantasy Football Hot Seat, me and my co-host Rob, we talked about that. We're hoping this can, lead to Kerryon Johnson finally being unleashed in Detroit. And then other than that, no major news. As far as the injury front, it's the same type of guys on the Lions that have been on the injury report over the last couple of weeks. Jared Davis has been limited with an ankle injury. Taylor Decker has been limited with a back injury. Deshaun Hand with his elbow, and Rashad Melvin with his knee. All those guys have been limited. Eagles are really banged up right now. They are so banged up that they actually canceled their Wednesday practice and just did a walkthrough. Corey Clement hasn't practiced with a shoulder injury. Jonathan Cyprin hasn't practiced with his knee injury. Dallas Goedert hasn't practiced with his calf injury. Now, it's already expected that Deshaun Jackson is going to miss the next 2 weeks with his abdomen injury. He hasn't practiced. Alshon Jeffrey hasn't practiced with his calf injury. And then Timmy Jernigan, who's going to be out for a while, has not practiced with his foot injury. As far as this game, it's hard to predict this game because the Lions, they're coming off I want to say impressive, but they're coming off a solid win against against the Chargers last week. And the Chargers, in my mind, are a pretty good team, even though they're dealing with all their injuries. But the Lions might be getting teams at the right time, right? They're getting the Eagles that are banged up right now. But it's in Philadelphia. I still think Carson Wentz can be Carson Wentz this season. I'm not going to start throwing my doubt his way after a somewhat up and down game last week against the Falcons. I think the Eagles find a way to get this done. I think it could be close because of all the injuries. I think it could be like a 24-17 type win for the Eagles. But I do think at the end of the day, the Eagles find a way to win this. Moving on to the next game is this is a trash game. I'm sorry, guys. It's the Jets traveling to New England. On Monday night, Trevor Siemian broke his ankle, so Luke Falk is actually going to be getting his start. So it's the battle of the picks at 199 between Luke Falk and Tom Brady. Trust me, it's going to be a major difference on that. As no major news other than the injury reports from yesterday. Obviously, Sam Darnold hasn't practiced with his mono. Jordan Jenkins hasn't practiced with a calf injury. Big hurt is C.J. Mosley still hasn't practiced with his groin. Quentin Williams still hasn't practiced with his ankle. Demarius Thomas hasn't practiced with a hamstring and knee injury, and Kelvin Beachum has been limited with an ankle injury. On the Patriots front, James Devlin hasn't practiced with his neck injury. And also another thing, something I touched upon in the Monday episode, Isaiah Wynn did hurt his toe last Sunday. He's on the IR but he could return in 8 weeks. And a result of that, they signed Caleb Benenoch, but he's already limited with a calf injury. I wouldn't read into this too much, but Tom Brady was limited with a calf injury as well. Marcus Cannon limited with a shoulder injury, and Matt Lacoste has been limited with an ankle injury. I mean, I'm not a betting guy, guys, but I know like the Patriots are like 20-plus point favorites against the Jets, which is rightfully so. This should be a butt whooping. The Jets are down Sam Darnold, they're down Quentin Williams, down C.J. Mosley. I'm not really going to talk about this game too much because it should be the Patriots' easy win. It should be an easy win. That's all I got to say. Sucks for the Jets, but they're going to get blown out on Sunday. Moving on to the next game, the Raiders are traveling up to Minnesota to face the Vikings. One news piece is, I believe it was 2 days ago, but the details came out yesterday. The Raiders traded a 6th-round pick to the Packers for a wide receiver kick returner in Trevor Davis. Their current kick returner, Dwayne Harris, hasn't practiced, so it's probably why they made that trade. As far as the injury front for the Raiders or other players, Trent Brown has not practiced yet this week with a knee injury. Gabe Jackson still is not yet to return to practice with his knee injury. Josh Jacobs is dealing with a hip injury. He's limited, but he also posted on his Instagram yesterday he's dealing with an illness and he's lost 10 pounds. So it'll be interesting to see if he truly has lost that weight on Sunday and see if that has any effect on his play if he ends up being active. Tyrell Williams has been limited with a hip injury. Vontaze Burfict has been limited with a shoulder and knee injury. Garyon Conley, the guy that suffered the neck injury, he's been limited. And PJ Hall has been sick this week, and he was limited. As far as the Vikings injuries, this should be expected. Mackenzie Alexander, he's still dealing with that elbow injury. He's going to be out for a while. Surprise, though, as Anthony Barr hasn't practiced with the groin injury. Shamar Stephen hasn't practiced he's been limited with a knee injury, and Pat Elflein, their guard, has been limited with a knee injury as well. As far as how this game will go, guys, if Trent Brown doesn't play, that's the biggest thing I'm watching on this injury report, right? Because the Vikings have arguably one of the best defensive lines in the league, and they're always tough at home. If Trent Brown's out, guys like Everson Griffin and Daniil Hunter will be able to get after the quarterback, force Carr into those mistakes, which he does struggle when he gets under pressure. Mike Hughes should be returning this week. He's been a full practice, so he should be able to make his debut since tearing his ACL last year. So their defense just got better as far as in the secondary. Honestly, I think the Vikings walk all over them. They're at home. If this was maybe in Oakland, maybe it's a different story, but I think this has to be a get-right game for Kirk Cousins. Like, even if they do lean on Dalvin Cook a lot, Kirk Cousins has to deliver anytime they ask him to throw. Now, if he struggles against the Raiders, then that sends major questions for the Vikings for the rest of the season. But I think the Vikings handle this. I see them winning by at least 10 points at the end of the day. Moving on to my next game, this is one of, besides maybe the Sunday night game, this is probably the best game of the week. Baltimore is traveling to Kansas City. Battle between Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. There's been no news coming out for either team this week. As far as the injury front, it looks like the Ravens are still going to be missing Jimmy Smith with his knee injury. He hasn't practiced with that. Their all-star tight end Mark Andrews has been limited with a foot injury, but the expectation is that he will play. Eric Fisher underwent groin surgery, so he's going to be out a while. So he hasn't practiced. Tyreek Hill still hasn't returned to practice as well. Damian Williams hasn't practiced this week with his knee injury, and then LaShawn McCoy was limited with his ankle injury. As far as how this game's going to turn out, it's going to be very interesting because, I don't know how to gauge the Ravens quite yet. Yes, they've been lighting things up, but they really haven't been tested as far as on the defensive side of the ball. And honestly, on the offensive side of the ball, yes, they faced the Cardinals, but I'm still, not the biggest believer in the Cardinals offense because they're not putting up major points like you would expect them to. So they're going against Patrick Mahomes. They're down Jimmy Smith on the road. I think this is going to be a barn burner, to be honest. I think this is going to come down to the end of the game, and I right now trust Patrick Mahomes' arm over, even though it's much improved, Lamar Jackson's arm. So I think Patrick Mahomes helps find a way to get the victory for the Chiefs, and I think it's going to be I can see it be like a 35-31 type win for the Chiefs. I think this is going to be a really good game on Sunday. Moving on, the Atlanta Falcons are traveling to Indianapolis to face the Colts. No major news for either team. There hasn't been really much news outside drama situations so far in the NFL season. With the Falcons injury front, their punter, Matt Bosher, he hasn't practiced with a groin injury. Keanu O'Neal's been limited with a groin injury. McEnroe has been limited with a back injury, and Caleb McGarry has been limited with a knee injury. On the Colts front, this is going to be huge if he misses, but Darius Leonard, he hasn't practiced with a concussion. We'll have to see if he can get out concussion protocol before game day. If he's out, obviously the defense takes a major hit. Marlon Mack hasn't practiced with a calf injury, but most of the beat reporters from Indianapolis thinks he will play. We'll see if he can get into practice reps today. Pierre Desir, who's supposed to be out a while with his injury, was actually only limited with his knee injury. T.Y. Hilton was limited in a quad injury, but T.Y.'s a warrior. I wouldn't read into that too much. And Jabal Sheard is finally started practicing with a knee injury. I want to expect him to play. I think they want to get him to at least to a full practice status before they put him out on the field. As far as how I think this game's going to go, this is going to be a really good game, guys. I think this is going to be kind of like the previous game. I think this has shootout potential, but I also see this could be a defensive type battle. Maybe this be more, maybe the Colts try to play ball control and try to keep the ball out of Matt Ryan and Julio Jones' hands throughout the game, because the Falcons still hold that big play offensive playmaking ability, which we saw from the Falcons against the Eagles last week. I think this is the type of game that's going to come down to who has the ball last, right? I think it's going to be between Matt Bryant and Adam Vinatieri. And since the Monday episode, it's came out that Vinatieri is not retiring. And I'm going to be honest, not only just as a Colts fan, but as an NFL fan, I would love to see Adam Vinatieri get back on track, and I'd love to see him kick that game-winning field goal. For that reason, I got the Colts winning 31-28. Sorry, Joe Carlino of Blitzalytics. Moving on, Denver's traveling out to Green Bay. No major news on either team. Juwan James still hasn't practiced, dealing with that knee injury. A surprise if you own him in fantasy, guys, is Cortland Sutton hasn't practiced with his ribs. And then Bryce Callahan's been limited with a foot injury. Jimmy Graham hasn't practiced this week with a groin injury. Oren Burks is still out for them with a chest injury. And then Blake Martinez and Kyler Fackrell have both been limited with a shoulder injury. How I think this game's going to go is I don't know. You want to say the Packers will easily win this because they're at home. They got a better defense. The offense is slowly but surely starting to click. And then with the Broncos, their defense, man, I mean, the craziest stat I saw this week is that Von Miller and Bradley Chubb have 0 sacks combined. So it's like something's got to give on that front. The Green Bay Packers have actually given up the most sacks on third down so far this year. So I wonder if this is going to be that coming out party for the two of them. I think this game's going to be a very close game, but I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game. I think it's going to be like a 17-14 type win, a 21-7 type win. Since it's at home and I trust Aaron Rodgers over Joe Flacco, I say the Packers squeeze out a win and go 3-0 to start their season. Moving on, this is another trash game, guys. Miami Dolphins is traveling out to Dallas to face the Cowboys. There's a couple things on the news front. They're moving off from Fitzpatrick. Josh Rosen's getting the start. Man, I feel bad for Josh. He was my quarterback 1 going into that draft class. I still believe in him. I just don't. He's gone from a terrible situation to Arizona to somehow a worse situation in Miami. They're giving him nothing. He doesn't have a line in front of him. But I hope he balls out, man. Even in a losing effort, I hope he can put on some good tape, and maybe Miami can flip him for more picks, and he can go somewhere else and go to a true franchise that wants to win. I wish Josh the best. Let's see how he can perform with that line in front of him. Another thing that involves both teams, actually, Robert Quinn is coming off his suspension for the Cowboys, so because of that, and to create space on the roster, they released their 2017 first-round pick in Taco Charlton, who was claimed by the Dolphins. So he's going to be facing his former team this Sunday. The Dolphins need help, so I honestly think they're just going to line up Taco as much as they can and probably just say, go get Dak, even if he doesn't know the play call. As far as the injury front with the Dolphins, Albert Wilson's hasn't practiced with his hip and calf injury. Bobby McCain's been limited with a shoulder injury. And then obviously the guy I talked about on the Monday episode, Michael Gallup, he's going to be out for 2 to 4 weeks. So obviously he's not practicing. Tyrone Crawford with a hip Antoine Woods with a knee and Xavier Woods with an ankle injury. All three of those guys haven't practiced as well. Guys, Dolphins are trash, man. You're going to hear the same thing from me until proven otherwise. Cowboys should handle business. They're at home. They should spank them by 20-plus points. I'm not going to go into any more details on that. Moving on to the afternoon games, the Giants do travel down here to Tampa to face the Buccaneers. Sterling Shepard has cleared the concussion protocol, so he'll be back in the lineup. That should definitely help Daniel Jones out because he needs help at the wide receiver position because three other wide receivers on the roster are banged up. Benny Fowler hasn't practiced with a hamstring injury. Cody Lattimore hasn't practiced with a concussion injury. And Darius Slayton has been limited with a hamstring injury. As far as the Bucs, Devin White has yet to return to practice with his knee injury. Jamal Dean has been out with an ankle injury. Blaine Gabbert's still out with that shoulder injury. And then Bashard Perryman's been limited this week with a quadriceps injury. As far as how I think this game's going to go, I don't know, man, right? Like, it's kind of hard because the Bucs have been playing good on defense. The Giants' defense is trash, to say the least. So this should be a good game for Jameis Winston to continue. And you'll see the article, guys. It's going to be on Blitzalytics.com, my weekly article on the Bucs because I am the Bucs beat writer. But I wonder if Jameis Winston can start his no turnover streak, and this is a good game for him to start that because the Giants' defense is not that great. Daniel Jones, we'll see. Is he going to force mistakes or is he going to come out and light the NFL on fire? I think he's going to have an up and down game. I think because of the Giants' defense being as poor as it is, I think the Bucs find a way to win. It could be a close game, but I think the Bucs win by like a touchdown or like 10 points. This should be a game they handle business and try to get a hold of the NFC South with Drew Brees being out. And if they do struggle against Daniel Jones, then maybe the Bucs are the team we thought they were coming out of week one. Moving on to the next game, Carolina is traveling out to Arizona to face the Cardinals. A couple things on the news front. The Cardinals restructured Chandler Jones' contract to create $4 million in cap space. I believe that led to now they have $11 million in cap space for this year. So that makes people assume that they might be trying to trade for somebody. Could it be Jalen Ramsey? Possible. I think maybe if they're going to trade for somebody, it should be Trent Williams out of Washington because they need line. That Cardinals line is terrible. So if that's going to be the move they're making, that would make sense. Other than that, Cam Newton. He hasn't practiced this week. He was in a walking boot yesterday. All the signs point to Kyle Allen being the starter for the Panthers. A little fun fact because of this game: Kyler Murray and Kyle Allen were once teammates at Texas A&M, and Kyle Allen beat out Kyler Murray for the job. So it's kind of cool if Kyle Allen does get the start because then the two of them are facing off now in the NFL. As far as any other notable injuries, Bruce Irvin still has yet to return to practice with his hamstring injury. Quan Short hasn't practiced this week with a shoulder injury. And then on the Cardinals front, Jordan Hicks was limited with a groin injury. If Cam's not playing, guys, I think this is the perfect game for Arizona to get their first win. Carolina's defense will still be tough, but their secondary is somewhat solid, but it still has holes there and there. So I think Cardinals can find a way to pick apart their defense throughout the day. The Cardinals should handle this business, but if Kyle Allen can play a relatively good game, it could be close too. But I think I have the Cardinals somehow squeezing out a win. I think the Cardinals win their first game of the year, and then the Panthers, I see them falling 0-3. Something I put out there on my Twitter and I've been talking about with people this morning is if the Panthers end up losing, I wonder if David Tepper, their new owner, might blow up things at the end of the season, get a new head coach, GM, and possibly even quarterback. Because if Cam Newton can't return to his old self, can't return to his style of play, Panthers can cut him this offseason and save $19.1 million in cap space and only have $2 million in dead money. We went from beginning of the season, hardly any teams need quarterbacks, to now it feels like 5 to 10 teams might be searching for a new quarterback in the offseason, or at least a potential replacement for who they have at the current moment. Moving on, Pittsburgh Steelers traveling out to San Francisco 49ers. Let me see. Yeah, no major news as far as them. As far as injuries, Joe Hayden hasn't practiced with a shoulder injury. Bud Dupree has been limited with an ankle injury. Vince Williams been limited with a hamstring injury. Of course, it's this never-ending story with the 49ers and their injuries. It's going to be a long list, guys. Tevin Coleman's still out with that ankle injury. Dee Ford hasn't practiced with a quadricep injury. Jalen Hurts still out with his back injury. Joe Staley obviously missing time with his fibula. Trent Taylor hasn't practiced with his foot injury. And then Nick Bosa with an ankle. Jaquise Tart has been with his toe, and Jimmy Ward with his hand. All three of those guys have been limited. As far as this game, guys, I mean, this is now, just like I said about the Bills, this is a chance for the 49ers to make a statement. They're at home. Mason Rudolph is making his first start on the road for Pittsburgh. Like, this has to be a game that the 49ers win. Like, they cannot lose this game. Because if they lose this game, it just brings my doubts for the 49ers that I had at the beginning of the season. This should be a game they handle. I expect the 49ers will win. I think they're going to play ball control, run the ball with Breida and Mostert, pick them apart here and there with Deebo Samuel and George Kittle. I think the Steelers offense should struggle this afternoon. But if Mason Rudolph has a day, then it just shows that the 49ers secondary really needs some help, and maybe that's another team that could go after Jalen Ramsey. But yeah, I think 49ers handle their business. They should win by a touchdown and 10-plus points. Moving on, the New Orleans Saints are traveling out to Seattle to face the Seahawks. Totally messed that up. No major news. Of course, we all know Drew Brees is out. Traquan Smith hasn't practiced with an ankle injury. Ted Ginn with his thigh has been limited. Andres Piet's been limited with an ankle injury, and Sheldon Rankins is still limited with his ankle injury. On the Seahawks front, Nico Thorpe hasn't practiced with a hamstring injury. Jerron Brown's been limited with a toe injury. Poona Ford's limited with a calf injury. Tedrick Thompson has been limited with a hamstring injury. DJ Fluker's been limited with an ankle injury, and Trey Flowers has been limited with his injury. As far as how I think this game's going to go, it just depends, man. Another thing I forgot to say, everybody's assuming that Teddy Bridgewater is going to start, but Sean Payton said the other day when somebody asked him about that he said, like, basically you assume that Bridgewater's starting. So is it possible that we might see Taysom Hill out there to start the game? Maybe both of them are on the field to start the game. I mean, if Sean Payton isn't afraid to take Drew Brees out for Taysom Hill, why would he be afraid to take out Teddy Bridgewater for Taysom Hill? So I think we're going to see a combination of both the guys. As far as this game, man, is like, if Drew Brees was playing, I could see the Saints winning this. But with it being in Seattle, this has got to be a game that Seattle handles their business, kind of like the Niners, kind of like the Bills, right? They're 2-0. They're at home. They're facing a relatively weaker team because of the Brees injury. Even though they still got Kamara and Michael Thomas, I think they'll find ways to stay in the game, the Saints, throughout like the first three quarters. But I think once they get to the fourth quarter, Seattle will start leaning on Chris Carson, Rashard Penny. They'll start running out the clock, peppering targets at Tyler Lockett, to DK Metcalf, and I think they end up pulling away. I think this is gonna be one of those games where the score makes it look like a blowout at the end, but the Saints were like in it the whole time. But yeah, I got the Seahawks winning this game. Moving on, Houston is traveling out to LA to face the Chargers. No major news on that front. The Texans, Laramie Tunsil's been limited with an ankle injury. Of course, Hunter Henry has not returned to the practice with his knee injury. Mike Pouncey, their best lineman, hasn't practiced this week with a shoulder injury. And then Keenan Allen, he's been limited with a knee injury. This has a potential to be a very good game. I think this has a potential to be a shootout type of game. But as far as how I think this game will go, I think with Joey Bosa, Melvin Ingram, and that strong defensive front, and with the poor offensive line of the Texans, they're going to be able to get after Watson. They're going to be able to get some sacks, try to force him into mistakes, try to force those turnovers. I think this is going to come down to the wire, who has the ball at the end of the game. I think with this game, I trust the Chargers coaching staff over the Texans coaching staff. So I think the Chargers will find a way to win this game. And you guys can come at me on Twitter if you want, but I just don't think the Texans have that fan base that will travel that well. So I think, how if anybody watches Chargers home games, usually the opposing team has a lot of fans that are making negative impact on the Chargers with the sound, but I don't think that's going to happen in this game. So I think the Chargers will find a way to win. I think it's going to be like a 27-24 type win for the Chargers. Moving on to which you could argue for this could be the best game of the week because of all the star power, the Sunday night football game. The Rams are traveling out to Cleveland. They face the Browns. And no major news. As far as injuries with the Rams, Austin Blythe hasn't practiced with an ankle injury. Tyler Higbee hasn't practiced with a chest injury. Aaron Donald's been limited with that back injury, but we saw him leave the game, then come back right in last Sunday, so he should be good to go. Now on the Browns front, man, they are banged up. Bear with me, guys. Morgan Burnett hasn't practiced with a quad injury. Chris Hubbard hasn't practiced with a foot injury. Christian Kirksey hasn't practiced with a chest injury, and the report sounds like he might be missing some time. David Njoku hasn't practiced with a concussion and a wrist injury. Sounds like he broke his wrist. He's trying to get a timetable as far as when he'll be able to return. If I get an update on that, I'll talk about that on Monday's episode. Demarius Randall has yet to return with a concussion injury. Denzel Ward has been limited with a hamstring injury. Greedy Williams has been limited with a hamstring injury. Larry Ogunjobi has been limited with an ankle injury. Rashard Higgins limited with a knee injury. Joel Patino has been limited with an abdomen injury. Banged up, to say the least. How I think this game will go. This game screams that it should be a shootout potential, but all these injuries scare me. That offensive line with the Browns, like I've been harping on, scares me. They're going against Aaron Donald, Dante Fowler. I mean, the Rams defense has been pretty good this year. I think they're going to get after Baker Mayfield. I think they're going to force him into mistakes. Baker hasn't looked like Baker this year. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's the line. I don't know if he's second guessing himself. This has a potential to be a shootout. One of those, like, I could see that Rams Chiefs game of last year if everybody was healthy with the Browns. But for whatever reason, with all the injuries, I think the Rams handle business, guys. I think they win by 7-10 points. I really do. I got the Rams winning this, but I also could see this being a shootout and the Browns finding a way to win at the end. But I hope this is a good game, but all those injuries scare me for the Browns right now. Moving on, the Monday Night Football game is the Chicago Bears versus the Redskins. Neither team has any major news coming out. Trent Williams still hasn't reported for the Redskins. Of course, like always, I will give my prediction on that game on Monday with the full status of the injury report on Monday's episode. Nothing to update on their front, so please stay tuned on the Monday episode for that. And then, as always, my producer asked me a couple questions actually. Are any teams done this year other than Miami, or will that be with a loss this week? I hope I understand that right. It's teams that are done this year. Honestly, I think the Jets are already done. Like, Sam Darnold can miss anywhere between 3 to 7 weeks. Ideally, they're going to get him back in the bye week in a couple of weeks. I don't even think that matters. They have such a tough schedule. If C.J. Mosley and Quinnen Williams are banged up throughout the year, I think it's a lost cause. Thinking around from teams. Who else is Owen? Yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and say the Jets. If I had to pick one team, I would say the Jets off the top of my head. And honestly, too, if Cam can't return to being healthy, the Panthers might be done, too, when you think about it. But it's obviously too early to tell. I mean, look what happened last year with the Texans and Colts. They both started, 0-2, 0-3, like really bad records, and they both went on 9+ game winning streaks, and they have both made the playoffs. So it's always too early, but it's something to monitor over the next couple weeks as we wrap up the opening month of the NFL. And a fun question he asked me, who am I grabbing a beer with, Baker Mayfield or Gardner Minshew? I got to go with Gardner. Gardner seems like a party animal. He seems like he's fun. I mean, yeah, Baker probably is a fun guy, but it seems like Baker likes to be serious too often. He might question if I've ever questioned him. He doesn't like when people give him criticism too well. Gardner just seems like a fun dude, but I would just have to ask myself how many beers I want to have with him before that guy tries to run around naked or something, and I'm not about that. And then moving on, guys, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. This has been a blast doing these episodes. If you ever want to reach out to me, my @ is at Cody Talks NFL on Twitter. Feel free to reach me at questions. If you have any problems with any of my takes, feel free to message me about that as well. And then other than that, guys, as always, if you guys don't have time to watch this on YouTube, the audio version will be up on the Blitzalytics Podcast Network. Please like and subscribe to Blitzalytics Podcast Network. Not only my Cody Talks NFL show is on there, but we have things like the Blitz Breakdown, the Pick Six. Of course, they got my fantasy podcast with Rob called the Fantasy Football Hot Seat on there. Every week, guys, we do our studs and duds from the previous week, waiver wire watch, trade targets, and your stardom sit-ems for the upcoming week. So please tune into that as well. And lastly, guys, please, if you guys like to donate to charity, help out good causes. We got a fantasy football charity league, the All Heart Charity League going on right now. Please go to go.rallyup.com/allheart/campaign. There's 10 teams in there, 10 different charities. Donate to whatever you want. I would hope that you guys can donate to all 10. That's great. Obviously, this is about helping other people, not helping out our fantasy teams. Other than that, guys, thank you for tuning in, and Blitz out.
Thank you for watching Cody Talks NFL, presented by Blitzalytics.com. As always, hit that like and subscribe button, and then hit that bell notification icon to stay up to date on all things football.